Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another show of RPMHD. I'm Mike D, your host here with Dave W. We're going to do a quick recap of the NHRA Toyota U.S. Nationals. Dave, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here and break down the biggest drag race of the 2024 NHRA season.
Yeah, that indeed it was. And while it was a lot of cheers and thrills for a few drivers, there was some heartache for others. And we'll get into all that. And I don't know, Dave, where you want to start today? Top Fuel, Pro Stock Motorcycle, Pro Stock, Funny Car, where would you like to start?
We get to start with probably the biggest story of the weekend. Start with Top Fuel Dragster for sure.
Well, if we're starting with that, we got to talk about Clay Millican. His first Indy win. Jim Oberhofer, the crew chief. Those guys had a decent weekend. I mean, granted, it was a great weekend when you win, but when you they didn't necessarily light the world on fire throughout the day or throughout qualifying, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They got the win.
No, I mean, they were consistent. They got the car down the track. I mean, they were surprisingly, well, you can't really look at number 13 qualifier as a negative anymore because of how close that field was. I mean, you had from 369 to number one all the way to 392 for all 20 dragsters that were there and some of the surprising DNQs. But I guess surprising for Clay, bottom half start. But just like always, they turn it on during race day and they laid it down round one. They found their tune-up back. It seemed like the weather maybe came a little bit back to their favor. First, second round, started going rounds. He was a little bit behind to Steve Torrence just before the 8th mile in that final round. I don't know if the TV camera showed it very well, but from where I was sitting in the stands, Steve Torrence was probably a good wing in a front wing ahead of him. And then the rear end gave out on the Torrence dragster and Clay motored onto the win. But that was an epic showing for Torrence, trying to basically make it down the quote-unquote bad right-hand lane with as much as struggles that drivers were having getting down that side of the track. The lane choice could have made all the difference in the world for Clay and team in that final. So they got from A to B on 4 passes on Monday and did what they had to do.
No, they really did. And as we look at it again, I mean, when I first watched it live, I mean, I thought Torrence had this in the bag, and then all of a sudden it quit, and that was that. I mean, Clay got the win. I mean, and it couldn't happen to a better guy. Not to say that anybody's bad or anything like that, but Clay Millican is one of the real liked guys, and I mean, it couldn't happen to a better guy in Top Fuel than to see Clay get a win at Indy of all places.
No, and the crowd loved it. I mean, as soon as Torrence faltered and you seen the smoke come out of the pipes and Clay motor away, I mean, the cheers from the crowd was amazing. The amount of fists that went in the air. I mean, people genuinely love to see Clay win that race. And, you could tell just the amount of people that were cheering for him throughout his winner's interview as he came back up the return road, the amount of people that stayed and went down on the starting line for their the crowd interactive winner circle that they have at the end of the NHRA events, the amount of people that stayed just to see winner circle in general when they were doing the photos with the teams. I mean, they really, really, really loved and appreciated seeing him win that race.
Yeah, and I mean, how was that experience? I mean, you were there. You were at Indy over the weekend for the majority of it. I mean, how was that experience for you?
Oh, it was a great time. I mean, when you look at it on TV, it looks like it's a little bit bare in the stands in some of the spots. But I will tell you, from being there, the pits were packed. The lines for all of the food vendors and drink vendors were just packed. I mean, you had to wait probably 5-10 minutes just to get anything to eat or drink. So you didn't park anywhere close. The parking lot was full. We were way down in the shutdown area by the time you get a place to park and walk your way all the way up into the admission gates. So it didn't look like it on TV, but there was a lot of people there. The place was definitely packed. Not necessarily as much as Indy of old, but definitely a good time. And the weather was just perfect for it. I mean, sunny days, a little bit on Saturday morning, a little bit of rain to detract a little bit to the day. But as soon as they started, they fired off late nights of sportsman racing. So, I mean, this pretty much has everything that you want to see if you're a drag racing fan from top to bottom.
No, and I've been to Indy a few times, and it may not be the Indy of the old, but it is definitely usually a packed house and a very large amount of people there. I'm usually parked in the back, or if I'm credentialed, I'm in the media section, thank God. But so I totally know what you mean. And I mean, like you say, the weather, well, we spoke about it earlier. I know the weather wasn't necessarily cool record-setting conditions.
Not till Monday morning. Monday morning it was brisk. I mean, it was only in the 60s. The sun didn't really heat up the track too much yet for first round, which is why you saw the times that you did. The only detractor, I guess, would have been maybe the headwind that they had coming in. It was a pretty stiff breeze that was pretty chilly, but once it got through a little bit past, I want to say second round is when the temperature really started to climb. The track really started to bake in that sun, and the breeze died down, and it was pleasant. But if you were in the shade, it was okay. If you were in the sun, it was definitely hot. So I can understand why that track conditions got pretty tricky. The fact that the tuners got the cars down it and to run the numbers that they did was pretty amazing too for as tricky of a track as it was.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's what makes the competition better. When you got a hot racetrack and you can't just get the high horsepower cars that can just run off from little guys, it gives the little guys a chance. Speaking of high horsepower race cars, Doug Coletta, who would have ever thought, did not make the field at Indy this year. And that had to be his biggest shock to everyone as well as me and you.
Oh, it was. I mean, they got behind the 8 ball early. And again, when we talk about 20 top-notch, top-quality, top-fuel dragsters that are going to go A to B and put a good number down, the fact that they couldn't, and the fact that they went into Sunday, which as the weekend progressed, the temperature got hotter and hotter and hotter, it didn't look like it was going to be really good in their favor. Q4 was not good. Q5, it was really looking like, with the weather the way that it was, I'm surprised that anybody got down the track as good as they did, to be honest with you. And the fact that Doug went out there, made his heroic last-minute effort, only to come up on the number 16 spot and then get bumped out by his teammate, that had to be even worse. Because the way that it played out, you know, at least one Coletta car was going home. It was either going to be Sean or Doug, which, again, you don't expect that as you're going into the biggest race of the year, the last chance, points and a half. We're getting ready for the countdown to start. And number 1 and 2 drivers in points are the two that are battling for the DNQ spot.
Yeah, I mean, when I seen Doug go across the lights with all pipes lit, and I figured he got in. I just didn't think it would be on the bump. And when they said it was on the bump, it was like, oh, well, this ain't good. I mean, because I mean, you got Langdon, and I mean, and Langdon wasn't necessarily safe. You had Jasmine Salinas coming behind him, who ultimately didn't make the show, but that still had to be a moment, you know, for Sean Langdon as well.
I mean, it did. And not to take anything away from the Salinas team, but I don't think that they've really had the hot weather tune-up. I didn't think that she was going to go down there and be as much of a threat specifically. And, I mean, if you look at that session, going in where the bump spot was and where it ended up and the runs that the cars made, I mean, Ida Zetterstrom was right there next to Doug, actually ran 3,000ths quicker than Doug. And that was an impressive run to me in the track conditions the way that it was, because if you look at Monday's winner, Clay Milliken, he only went at 82. Sean Reed, 83. Doug Foley, a 79. Schumacher, really impressed with a 77. Steve Torrance with a 77, but Billy a 381. Trip Tatum was the most impressive with the 374. I mean, that was an absolute crushing run. But most of the dragsters had a race day tune-up in them, and most were getting down with high 70s, low 80s. And when it's Indy, that just wasn't enough. I mean, if that was Q3 and we still had one more to go and you got a baseline, okay, that was an impressive session. But when you're working on your race day when 90% of the cars are working on their race day tune-up in Q5 and you're still trying to make the field, I mean, they were definitely behind the 8 ball.
No, they were, and that is not the race. Well, it's not the race you want to be behind the 8 ball, but it almost is in a way because you have 5 chances to qualify. So if anything, you got that extra run to just kind of save you. And even with the extra run, it just didn't happen for them.
No.
Unfortunate but true. But I believe they're going into the countdown 1st and 4th, maybe, or 1st and 3rd. So, I mean, there'll be players. From what I read, they stayed and tested on Monday afternoon, and I can imagine results were good. I watching the broadcast. I know Alan Johnson said they were having issues with the clutch management system. Going into that 5th session, they was just kind of like they wish they had a test run, but they were just gonna, see what it does. It got them in for just that moment. Sean Langdon bumped them out, and that was that on the Reading.
And it makes you wonder which would hurt more, to go out there and miss it and be that close and know that you made a run down the track, or just go out there and annihilate the tires and just be like, well, we weren't even close. We didn't even make it. I think it's more heartbreaking that they go out there, they make the best run that they feel that they can given the weather and track conditions, and then get bumped back out.
Yeah. I mean, at least you learned something there. I mean, you learned something either way if you annihilate the tires, but I guess you learned more with that run, how much you might have had left in it, or what kids you improved on. So, nevertheless, they were spectators. At least the Kalita team was on Monday afternoon. And, Sean Langdon didn't last long either. I mean, granted, a great run in round 1 against Brittany Force, who I guess we can talk about as well.
Yeah.
She was 70. Her 370 beats Sean Langdon's 372. She's 075 on the tree. Langdon's 054. She annihilates the supercharger going through the lights, but yet gets the W, locks herself to the countdown. Not on that run, but later on in the day she did. Coming into this weekend, we kind of knew Brittany was on thin ice as far as would she get in, would she not, with Josh Hart and a few other guys behind her that can knock her out the top 10. And she pretty much made a statement, I believe, Q1 when she lured the boom on that with that qualifying run and qualifying number 1 for the weekend.
She did, but I will tell you that even knowing how race day was going to play out and that the weather conditions were better, and they probably were more in David Grubnick and Brittany Force's favor with how the weather and track was first round.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you go in there as a number 1 qualifier, you don't expect to race Sean Langdon in the first round of eliminations. You don't expect to be battling for the countdown or battling to stay into the top 10 to make the countdown and have to race the number 2 guy in points going into the first round of eliminations. And Sean put a couple hundreds on there, and Brittany drove around him, but just barely. I mean, they showed the finish line freeze frame cam, and that motor was already belching fire out of it. The supercharger was already gone, and she was going across the finish line. So if that fuse was a little bit shorter, that could have very easily went Sean's way. And, you had Josh Hart win first round. I mean, he could have went the distance. It could have went the other way for Brittany in a hurry. But as it stood, she ended up making the top 10 pretty comfortably. She ends up actually in 9th over Billy Torrance in 10th.
Yeah, she gets in. She did her job definitely. She actually won a few rounds. I mean,
right.
She beat Tony Schumacher, a resurging Tony Schumacher, by the way, with a 377, a Schumacher's 379 before faltering, smoking the tires with an 898. I believe it came a 1-lane racetrack. We can talk about that in a moment. To Clay Milligan's 375, but she made her way in the countdown. She's done better over the last couple events. David Grubnick seems to have a handle on it, so to speak, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Will they be a player in these next 6 races?
I mean, I don't think that you can discredit them at all. I mean, they're definitely going to be a player at some point. I think that the momentum could be getting back to their side. I really think it's just going to depend on how the weather conditions play out at these races. I think if you get them cool, tight racetracks and Grubnick can pour the power to it, I think they're going to be a factor. If we get a couple of hotter races, which we don't typically see in Reading and in Charlotte, Dallas could be a crapshoot. St. Louis, I guess, could go either way. Usually that's the cool conditions. If you give them a chance. I mean, they're in there. They're at the bottom. I mean, they definitely got to dig their way out. Contenders, yes. World champs, I don't think so.
Well, we will see. That's I mean, no one had Doug Glitter, I don't think, penciled in at this time last year, and all of a sudden he explodes the tire in Reading, and all of a sudden fortunes change and they go straight to the top. So we will see. That is that's why we don't race them on paper. Another car I want to talk about. They say they found it. It being, I don't know what, but Tony Schumacher. Though he qualified 8th, it was an impressive 8th with a 373. Beat Sean Reed in round 1 via whole shot, but granted, 72 to 73. Sean Reed was right there with him. Before losing to Brittany Force, granted, dead late on the tree, only 200s behind. Is that a car, being that, Tony said it, they found it, whatever it is, do you see them being a factor or a threat come countdown?
No. No, that is my personal, honest opinion. No, until they can string together a bunch of consistently quick runs. And again, we talk about how much qualifying matters and how some of these championships have come down to the little points. The session points are going to make a huge deal, and they're just not really up at the top in these sessions like they should be. So they're giving up a huge disadvantage. You can't qualify mid-pack, and you can try and go a couple of rounds and make up for it. But I think that their Achilles heel is going to be the car is just not quick enough to pick up enough qualifying bonus points and position points to offset the round wins that he's going to have.
Yeah, you may be right with that. I don't know, will the Ida Zetterstorm Association help that team? I imagine it can't hurt them. She did well on her own this weekend, beating a troubled TJ Zizzo in round 1 with a 375, her quickest and career best, before losing to Torrance. Put up a representative number of 79 to Torrance at 74 before the losing effort. When I hear teams say that they found it, whatever it is, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. The Tony Schumacher dragster has been slow most of the season. When we get hot racetracks, the competition kind of comes back to them. Granted, they have won a race this year somehow, some way. And for them to run a 73, which might be one of their quickest runs of this season, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they could hurt some feelings come this countdown. Will they win the championship? I don't know. I mean,
I know that they're not. Come on, man. They're not going to win a championship. We both know that. We all know that. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you got to look at it. Yes. Can they hurt some feelings? Can they be championship spoilers? Yeah, they can ruin somebody's day. Tony can go out there and cut a light and ruin somebody's day, and that car might step up and ruin somebody's day early. But that's all they're going to do is ruin somebody's day and then be out the next round. I don't feel that they're going to be the team that you're going to think, oh, man, who's going to come from 8th in points to win this championship? Because I don't believe going through the entirety of the countdown. I mean, we've had Robert Hite come from a huge deficit in Funny Car, but I don't think in Top Fuel you've ever had anybody come back from more than 5th or 6th in points from the countdown start to win the championship. You don't. The field is too competitive and too tight, and I mean, yeah, they're going to hurt some feelings for sure, but I don't think that when Pomona comes around, that Tony's going to be in the chance for another championship. And maybe I'll be wrong, and I would happily, but I don't see that at this point yet.
Okay. I'll give you another car, another Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart's shown some improvement over the past 3 races. I believe it was a final round in Sonoma, won a few rounds in Brainerd, even in Indy. He was right there. He leaves good. They say they found it as well, whatever it may have been. And his performance on the track has certainly shown it to a certain extent. I mean, he qualified well at Indy. Is that a car? Qualified 2nd at Indy. Is that a car that you can say, based off last year's performance, I mean, they were right there and probably could have and should have won the championship. Is that a car you can see as a viable threat to win this championship this year?
No. It's just that easy. I mean, they may have been playing around with their weight issue and found some things with the car that they can work around with the tune-up, because that was their big Achilles heel earlier in the year because of the driver change, the difference between Leah and Tony being in the car. I think that the team is definitely coming around. I think that Tony is going more rounds, but I don't think that they're going to be just like the other ones. Yes, they are going to hurt some feelings in the countdown, but that car is not going to just show up every race, start running 360, start qualifying top 3, top 4, and be a consistent semifinal round or better car. I don't subscribe to the theory that people save their best stuff for the end of the year. I think that you're working on it, and you try and put your best foot forward and apply everything you learned throughout the season to when it counts the most. But you're not going to flip a light switch and make a team that just ran or was learning throughout the year and just come out there and just run over the rest of the field. There's too many good cars for anybody to do that, to be honest with you.
That is true. But I've only said because of this. Last year, it's the same team, same car, different driver, different weight. That car proved what they could do in the countdown. But granted, they were actually pretty consistent throughout the year as opposed to this season where they have not been nowhere near as consistent. Qualifying number 2 at the U.S. Nationals. Does that not give you some thought that they may have found it and that they can easily turn this thing around because they were right there last year and they were it was the last run of the season. They were right there. I was talking to Neil Strasburg in Sonoma, and I asked Neil what was the problem, and he pretty much says they're down on power. And me, I said, "Why don't you just jack up the compression?" He goes, "Don't you think we've done that already?" I said, "Okay." Of course, he's smarter than me when it comes to these things. So I just kind of left it alone at that point because we were off the record. We were just talking. Me and Neil are good friends, but if they say they found the power wherever it may have been escaping, and based off what they done last year, I don't know. I almost got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Qualifying number 2 in Indy, going to the semifinals. I believe in the semifinals, it became a one-lane racetrack for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know. I would have to say that those guys have found it at the right time, and they definitely are going to be factors. I personally have that car finishing top 3 in the points. Me personally.
Right.
I mean,
it's not unrealistic. I personally feel like a successful countdown for that team would be for Tony to get his first career win in the next 6 races and a top 5 points finish. I think that would be considered a successful countdown for Tony's first year in the car.
And that I can give you. Okay, let's go to another driver.
But
you're Indy champ.
You're just looking at like, oh, he's going to, I give that team top 3 in points. The driver hasn't even won a race yet. And you're thinking they're championship contention? Come on, man.
Where was Doug Coletta at this point last year? No one factored him in. He blows a tire. They pull out the backup car and he goes on a run. I mean, it can happen. Where was Robert Hight in 2009 or 2000? Yeah, where was Robert Hight in 2009? He was in the cellar. Goes on a run. I mean, I didn't have that guy penciled in.
Anything can happen. That's why we watch him. That's why we don't run them on paper. And that's why we got 6 exciting races to go.
You're absolutely right. Okay, I'll give you one more driver. Our Indy champ, Clay Millican. Championship contender or no?
Not.
He's won a few races this year. He's actually been more consistent than the other drivers I've named, including Brittany and Tony Stewart and Tony Schumacher.
Yes.
But not a fact.
I am not trying to take anything away from any of these drivers or any of these teams, but the drivers that you have asked, would you think that these are going to be championship contenders? Are the drivers that are 6th through 10th in points? They are the bottom half of the field, and throughout the season, even as good as they've run, they are still 200 plus points behind the top 5 drivers who have definitely run over the field. Doug Coletta, Justin Ashley, Sean Langdon, Steve Torrance, Antron Brown, those 5 guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they went into Pomona still all ready to go for the championship within 2 rounds between them. Would I love to see a spoiler come in and have a first-time champion possibly and have just an epic shootout in Pomona? 100%. But I don't think and granted, maybe winning Indy is the actual springboard that Clay Milliken's team needs to go into the countdown, and they come out there and hit it hard at Reading. I think momentum can do a lot for you. I think the mentality of, hey, we're out there, we're race winners, can do a lot for you. But if Torrance didn't have a parts failure, unfortunately, he'd be the Indy champion again, not Clay Milliken. So anything could happen anytime. That's why we race him. But I don't know. It seems like the Milliken team, I don't want to say they're short on power too, especially after that first round run. But those guys aren't picking up the qualifying points just like everybody else is. And with as tough as this field is and every last point that you need, look at how well Brittany Force did and was in championship contention based on just Grubnick killing it in qualifying and then picking up 3 points every time they had a session going down the track and 8 points being number 1 qualifier every race. That bought them a couple rounds, which they needed.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay. And like we say, that's why we don't race them on paper.
That's right.
Your countdown prediction in Top Fuel right now, who are your, I would say, your 3 major players?
I think that if I'm going to have to pick a top 3, I mean, I think a lot of guys are going to go into Pomona just like last year with a shot at it. If I'm picking a top 3, I'm going to say man, I really hate to disclude Justin Ashley from this, but I think it's going to be the 2 Coletta cars and Steve Torrance would be the top 3.
Well, okay, and if you said top 4, I'm assuming you put Justin Ashley. I would
put Justin Ashley in it ahead of Antron Brown just because they, at the start of the season, have shown, what they can do performance-wise in these cooler weather, really, tight racetrack type situations. But so did Team Coletta, and so did Sean Langdon. And I'd almost say that as we go into this countdown, I'd almost put Sean Langdon the favorite over Doug Coletta on the Coletta team.
Okay. I'm going to say both the Coletta cars. And I'm going to have to slide Justin Ashley into my 3rd spot just because even if he's 200s behind, he's going to buy you that on the starting line. I mean, the guy's just he's a machine when it comes to 030 lights. I mean, consistently at that. I mean, I can't remember the last time Justin Ashley was in the 070s. I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable what that guy can do on the starting line. If I had to go to a 4th person, it'd have to be Antron Brown. The problem Antron's had all year is when he wins a race, he goes out round 1 the next.
I was absolutely shocked to see him smoke the tires and lose to Clay Milliken first round in Indy. I did not see that coming.
Who won Brainerd?
Hell, I don't even remember to be. I don't even remember who won Brainerd. Let's see here. That's a good question. I only remember the last race, barely. Brainerd was Justin Ashley over Sean Langdon.
Oh, there we have it. So Antron, I think, won Sonoma. I think he was gone round 1 in Brainerd.
He was. He lost to Doug Coletta of all people. And again, this is why I say the qualifying stuff matters, because the field is as tight as it is. I mean,
he lost to Coletta.
A couple of thousands in qualifying dictates where your spot on the ladder is. And if you get the wrong draw first round, I mean, that's why, for me, I'm excited for this countdown in Top Fuel probably more than any other category, because I think that there's the guys in the bottom half of the field are going to surprise some people. They may move themselves up, but the way that the ladders are going to play out, you are going to see marquee countdown matchups first round at Reading. 100%. There's going to be 2 or 3 guys, countdown guys, that are gone on the trailer first round just because of the way the ladder plays out.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it's certainly going to be interesting countdown, as it always is. I don't think we're going to see any clear runaway. I think it's going to be as many as 4 guys when we get to Pomona, battling this thing out at the season ending finals. Well, funny car. Was there a surprise there or no?
Oh, there was a ton of surprises in funny car. A ton. How about Paul Lee coming out and winning the All-Star call-out, and then
as an alternate
getting it? Which, all right, so I didn't really understand that part of it. I thought that since Beckman's getting in for Force, like, he should have been in the call-out too. And I didn't realize that Austin Prock, even though he had done so well in qualifying all throughout the season, didn't even make it into the call-out. But I really think that that's a shame that Beckman should have been in there. But that's my personal opinion. Anyhow, awesome to see him pick up that win. And you want to talk about going from the highest to highest to the lowest to lows. Then he goes out there, loses first round, and gets knocked out of the top 10. So he don't even get to race for the championship.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, it was his own doing. A 101 light, 391 to Cruiser's 066 light, 392. Paul Lee had the car to do it. He just wasn't ready on race day. A 101 light's not going to get you many wins and eliminations in this sport. And you can't put that on the car of the crew, man. That was all driver. It was right there for the taking. Alexis, who actually did have a good weekend, was right there. And out of the top 10. Thanks for coming. But he'll be a factor in these next 6 races as far as hurting feelings, like you said, in top field. He's going to definitely hurt some feelings.
For sure. And I mean, I think that he was, I would just say, the surprise of the weekend in coming in there and picking up that win. And I think that was great for him. But I mean, overall, I would say race day surprise, and maybe just a resurgence as of late. And maybe somebody that could, if we're talking about hurting some feelings in the countdown, maybe not championship contention, but Blake Alexander and Jim Head have got that car on the rail lately, and they are putting down the numbers when it counts. I mean, coming off that strong win and now coming in here, definitely locked their way into the countdown, went all the way to the semifinals, and, unfortunately was in the bad lane against Austin Prock. Nothing you can do about that. Smoked the tires and was out. But that car is a consistent high 80, low 90 car, and they could go some rounds and move their way up pretty quick.
No, they definitely can. And like I said before, it looks like in the semifinals, for those who were there or those watching, it seemed to become a one-lane racetrack at that point. The only guy who really got down the lane was Ron Capps in a losing efforts with a 393, but everyone else in the field category smoked the tires who was in that right-hand lane. I don't know.
Well, Beckman was in the left lane, and they blitzed the tires, and Capps still had to pedal. He didn't run. I mean, a 431, but he got the win. But pretty much in all of the nitro categories from round 2 on, other than Ron Capps' semifinal, everything was the left lane. If you were not in the left lane, you didn't win. Now, some of the cars in the left lane, like, for example, Austin Prock won second round in the left lane, but on a hole shot. You could navigate the right lane. It was tricky, but they just – it didn't seem like – it seemed like it was about 1 to 2 hundredths behind the left lane no matter what, if you could make it down it. So
yeah. And credit to Alexis DeJoria. She gave Proc all he can handle. A 387. Oh, yeah. I mean, 084, which is actually a decent light for Alexis. She was 084 on a tree, and I'm not trying to throw shade here. I mean, I think she'll tell you that 084 isn't bad for her, and she was right there, and just not enough. Her car ran real well over the weekend and showed some great consistency. Maybe they figured it out. Maybe they found it. Will she hurt feelings, do you believe, Alexis DeJoria we're speaking of?
I think so. I mean, I can't imagine that they're going to go into this countdown and go winless. I mean, and when I say winless, I mean just round win rise. I mean, they are coming in 10th in points, but I feel like if anybody has a chance to move up from the bottom half higher, Alexis definitely does. I feel like that team, it's like when they're good, they're really good, and when they're bad, they're just. It's more bad luck or mistakes that cost them round wins than anything.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, hopefully
because
that
I'm
team.
pretty sure if you look at that second round of Funny Car, that 387 with a 6, other than Austin Prock and Jack Beckman, which because Beckman had a pretty good light too. He ran at 87. He would have beat her on a whole shot as well. She would have beat any other car in the field except for the 2 JFR cars, and that just happened to be who she lined up against. Ladder plays out any other way, Alexis is going to the semis.
No, you're right. You're right. So, Austin Prock gets the win. Not a huge shock there.
No.
Wins the event, beats Ron Capps in the finals. Capps hoping to catch lightning twice in a bottle with the Don Perdon tribute body once again. It almost happened.
It did.
And then it didn't. He just got beat by the better car in what I would call the better lane. And that's just part of it. Going into these last 6 races, it's always been over the last few years the big 4, whether it was Height, now what you would call Austin Prock, Tasca, Hagan, Capps. Matt Hagan didn't have a great Indy weekend. Will they be a factor this year come countdown? We haven't heard his name much this season, but you never count Dickie Venables out. Is that a car, even though they qualified only 8th in Indy, lost to Alexis first round, smoked the tire, is that a car that you think will be a factor come this countdown?
I think they're good for a couple of race wins, but I really feel like, personally, Austin Prock is going to have like a Steve Torrance or a Gage Herrera type countdown where he wins 4 out of 6 or, at least half of them. I mean, I don't see that car is slowing down any, and their runs on race day, 4 runs, 85, 87, 87, 88 at Indy in all track conditions, the good air, the bad air, the heat. I mean, it's hard to bet against Prock right now. I think that Hagan and Tasca, Capps, and maybe J.R. Todd are probably going to end up running basically for second place. And I guess you could lump Beckman into that for racing for John Force because, he's up there too into points. But I've not seen too many impressive things out of the Pete car with Beckman in it for just a couple of races like we did when John was in it. So it would be great for him to all of a sudden, like you say, just take 6 races to get hot, and that's all you really need. But I think everybody's running for second against Brock. But Hagan's definitely going to go out there and win a couple of them. But I don't think it's going to matter much.
Well, now wait a minute. Now back to the Beckman thing. He qualified 3rd. He went a blistering 384 in round 1, which I believe was low ET of the first round. Yep. It's only their second event. I believe he was low ET of the second round. You say you haven't seen anything out of it like John was in it. What more do you need to see? I mean, he was in the bad lane, the semis, if you ask me, but whatever. Or no, he just smoked the tires. They just blew the tires.
Right, but that's what I see. That's what that car had that problem. I think it was more of a problem last year with John than it was this year because John had such a hot start to the season. But that is really their Achilles heel, is getting into the late rounds, having the tune-up, having the consistency, having the power to get down the track, being in the good lane. And I don't know what caused that car to smoke the tires. Did it go over center? Did they have a mechanical failure? Did they have something that went wrong with it? I don't know. It's hard to say. But, a second round loss at Brainerd and a semifinal round loss at Indy.
The second round of loss at Brainerd wasn't a tire smoker. It actually ran pretty good.
No, it was a good run. I mean, Blake left first and outran him. I mean, that was it. So if that happens throughout the countdown, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So I just don't see. I think that similar to Tony Stewart and their situation, I think Beckman is probably going to win a race in the countdown. He's going to put that Pete car in winner's circle before the end of the year. But I don't know that I would say they're championship contenders just yet. Now,
Okay.
after 3 races in, that story could completely change.
Okay, let me ask you this. Proc and Beckman line up round 2. Who gets the win? Force isn't in the car. Beckman's running for Force, but at this point, Austin is his rookie year. Cornrow Tools is on his sponsor. Shenanigans or no?
No, I don't think you put shenanigans between either of them. But I think Proc's still probably going to win it anyway.
Okay.
Because
fair.
just consistently, they have had the better car to go down the track. Again, it's like the Peak team has the same power to play with, but they don't seem to manage it as well, if that makes sense. And it's not a knock on the team because they're running with the same tune-up and the same parts. And obviously they can go out there and run low, but I think they're a little closer to the line than maybe Proc's tune-up is too, and they just manage it better. It doesn't take much to go over center on one of these things, put them up in smoke, and you don't really have a chance to recover. But I think if you put them up side by side, I think you see a beautiful heads-up run, just like in the early days when they were both Castro cars and John and Tony would line up to each other and run 494s into quarter mile against each other and be the 2 quickest side-by-side pass in history. I mean, you line them up and you race for it. I don't think that there's shenanigans between the 2 of those guys. No.
Well, there was also a lot of times when Tony smoked the tires against John as well.
There was, but I'm talking about the early years. I'm not talking about when it got to 3 and 4 car teams and it was JFR versus DSR. When it was just them 2 versus the world, they run it pretty heads up. But yeah, I think if you put them side by side, I don't think that you're going to really tip it one way or the other or try and manipulate the outcome.
Do you think Tasca has anything to say about stopping Proc in this countdown this year?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely has a car that can run with Proc, especially in the back half. The consistency. Round 1 at Indy, he said the car just shut off. From TV, it looked like it smoked the tires, but when they interviewed Tasca, he said no, the car just shut off, and unfortunate. And then when I looked at replay, I said it looked like it might have did shut off, and and he lost to Buddy Hall and gave Buddy Hall credit to Buddy Hall, got his first round win at Indy for 100%. 406. How about that?
And I posted a picture because I was sitting there just around half track, but I put a picture on Facebook and I was like, it don't look like it here because Tasca was about 2.5 car lengths ahead of Buddy Hall and just motoring. And right after that picture, the pipes went wet and right on by, got his first round win. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see if that car would have stayed all the way to the finish line if Tasca would have been a mid to low 82.
Does Ron Capps scare you going into this countdown? Does he get?
Ron Capps hasn't scared me all year,
but he's gotten better over these last few races. He has gotten better. I mean, you want to get your stuff together now. And I know you don't believe in saving your stuff for the countdown, but what if you're not saving it? What if you're just not figuring it out until the countdown?
I'm not saying that any of these guys can't string together some consistency and some wins, but I mean, Austin Proc is like the Gage Herrera of funny car when it comes to getting that thing down the track. He just doesn't have the amount of wins to show for it, but he's starting to rack those up too. And that Cornwall team is they had the car early in the season. They just weren't winning the races. Now they still got the car later in the season, but they're stringing it together on race day too. And that's scary going into the countdown. I mean, they still had a 300-plus point lead going into it, even with his quote-unquote struggles and not collecting all the race wins that you would think that he would. But that car is a late-round contender every race, and that's really what you need to be.
Okay. I'm not going to make a prediction here of championship, but I think this guy is going to hurt some feelings going into the countdown. And I've said this before, and he's usually let me down, but I'm going to stand on it this time based off his performance in the last 2 or 3 events, and that's Cruz Petragon. Cruz He may not have the quickest, but he definitely has a consistent, good car. Granted, he beat Paulie on a whole shot, a 392 to a 391. It was right there against Beckman. Beckman went 87 with an O. The Petrogon's 94 with a 9, but 328 for Petrogon. That's nothing to hang your head about if you're Cruz. Even the last event, he was competitive. I think Cruz, he may not be a factor to win the championship. I would like to say he's going to be a guy that's going to ruin someone's day, maybe even Austin Prox, one day in these next 6 races. I see his car making a few final rounds. I can see Cruz's car going at least 3 final rounds in the next 6 races, if it stays consistent the way it's been running.
Wow. Can we document this video? Because I need something to laugh at later on, because that is rich. Cruz in 3 of the 6 finals. What is this?
No, semis. Not finals. Semis.
Yeah, that's still a stretch. He hasn't been there in a long time either. So good luck to him. But you don't take a 12th in points car out of a 16-car field and all of a sudden start running good. So he might have one magical day when a lot of people red light or go up and smoke against him, and congratulations to him. But I don't think he's going to be out there ruining anybody's day.
Well, Cruz, you heard it here first. I'm rooting for you.
I'm rooting for you too. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Dave's rooting. He just ain't got much faith in you, Cruz. But hey, we'll see what happens.
God bless him, man. I hope everybody go. I don't pull for anybody to have a bad day. That's for sure. I just don't think that some of them are going to have good ones.
You know what? It'd be like sometimes. Well, you know what? Let's talk about Pro Stock. This guy.
Pro Stock. Aaron is off the line first. Jake's moving over towards the center line. Who has enough race car? Aaron Stanfield.
You talk about a guy who came out of nowhere for the second half of this season. Aaron Stanfield, over the last 6-7 events, is he not the guy to beat right now?
No, I mean, he definitely is one of those guys that he's got the momentum going for him. And he is making a run kind of like how you go back about 22 years in 2002. You know, we ended 2001, one of the most competitive seasons, going into 2002, most different winners to start the season. How's this going to play out? And then about mid-year, Jed Coughlin just went on a tear. He started going to late rounds. He started stringing wins together, and he won a championship. And I feel like that's kind of how Aaron Stanfield's season is playing out this year. Didn't start out the greatest. He's kind of been there. He's put some good race days together, not necessarily as consistent as, say, Dallas Glenn, Greg Anderson, and Erica Enders had been, but he worked himself from the middle of the field, and he almost came pretty close. If he had a couple more round wins throughout the earlier part of the season, went into the countdown as the number 1 seed. And Dallas Glenn looked like he had that locked up races ago. And that's how good Aaron Stanfield has been these last couple months. I think he is definitely your odds-on favorite in Pro Stock right now, because that class, this isn't a class where anybody's down on power, they're going to step up, or they're going to do this. I think there was 2 or 3 races throughout eliminations that had identical ETs and nearly identical mile an hour, and you won it on the starting line right then and there because the cars went identically down the track, and that was it. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to say the least, but that Stanfield car right now and Aaron as a driver has got it going on.
No, he really does. And I'm reading the comments right now. The guy says, "You're on drugs. Cruz 3 semis." Kevin for Fun 12. All I'm saying is the car has gotten better over the last few races, and anything's possible. I can personally see him making 3 semis over the next 6 races. I'm not saying semis every on the next 6, but 3, it's very well possible. He says Jason Bunker has a round 2 tune-up at best. Hey, he's entitled to his opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind. But yeah, back to the pro stock thing. As great as Stanfield has been, and I definitely believe he'll be a player because not only can he drive, he definitely has a car that can win.
Mm-hmm.
You almost got to count this as Erica Ender's territory. I mean, when the countdown is on and her driving ability, I mean, she was in the finals at Indy. It's just hard to count out Erica going into this countdown in pro stock. I'm not going to bet against her. I think Greg will have the best car. I think Erica will be the best overall car driver combination. You just can't trust Greg on the tree in 6 straight races, and it's going to take all 6 races. I believe you're allowed 1 gimme, and Greg usually needs 2. And that's usually what's his downfall. Can Aaron Stanfield actually win this championship? Yes.
Yeah.
Can he outdrive and outrun Erica consistently over the next 6 races?
Yeah.
No. You think so?
I mean, they're running with seemingly equal performances. I mean,
it seems that at this time of year, Erica always just has a car that's 100th or 2 better than the rest of the elite cars. I mean, and it's always been that way. That's not a surprise to anyone listening. I'm not telling anything that anybody else doesn't know. I mean,
no. But at the same time, if Aaron can make it up on the starting line, I mean, he's got a shot.
And what I'm saying is, at this time of the year, it's hard to make up 200s on Erica on the starting line at this time of year. She's just not gonna give you that to work with.
Right.
I mean, that's where I think I'm not gonna say where the problem lies. It's just you give Erica Ender a great car and countdown competition, and you got to be basically 0-0 against her because she's just not going to give you the 200s that you need to beat her.
Right.
And that's hard to beat. And the only one who I see that can really be a challenge to Erica over these next 6 races is Dallas Glenn. And if there's anyone who I say, okay, if not Erica, it'd have to be Dallas. I just don't have enough faith in Greg Anderson's driving to be consistent over the next 6 races. Dallas Glenn, though he was a first-round loser, he ran a 656 to Christian Quadras 656. Dallas Glenn was 022 on the line. That's nothing to hang your head about. You're 022 on the line. I'll take that any day. Just that Christian Quadras was 008 and got the win.
But that's, I think my point is, you go to the couple of pairs later, and Fernando Jr. and Troy Jr. had identical ETs, and a 22 lost to a 14 on the tree. So, I mean, you're getting to the point where you really got to have that starting line down pat, or else you're going to be in trouble.
And the only thing I can say might be Erica's downfall, but I don't think it'll happen in the countdown, is where she takes rounds off. Round 1, she was 050 against Sienna Wildgus, who was 070. Well, right. If you're Erica, you don't need to be 0-0 against Sienna. She's not one for chopping the tree down. And personally, she does not have a car that can compete with you at this moment. So, but round 2.
Round 2. I mean, she's right back there, a 27 against David Quadra.
And then look at the semis.
Right. And then an 014. And that was definitely one of the driving performances of the day. I know it was a losing run, but Greg went up there, and I'm like, all right, these guys are in. It's going to be great. We're going to have a Greg and Erica final at Indy, the 70th U.S. Nationals. It's the 950th national event in pro stock, and we're going to have the two of the best battling out for that Wally. And Greg comes up there. He was 300s behind off the tree, just annihilates the tires, and just pushes the clutch in and coasts on down. And I'm like, oh man, you got to be kidding me. So it would have been hard, I think, for Greg. I think Aaron probably would have beat him on a whole shot anyway. Should they have made it to the finish line? Just my opinion. Didn't make it that far. So the next pair comes up. I was shocked that Erica did not change lanes, because they always say when that happens, it's like, that just ruins the track for the next guy. And Erica's like, nah, here we go. Let's run him up there. And
okay,
he goes up there, cuts a 014 light, rattles the tires, and just grabs second, third. If the thing's wiggling, shaking, saves the run, goes 702 at 206, trying to chase Jeg down, just hoping that something happens to him and he gets to the finish line first. I mean, she willed and drove that car down the track where everybody else would have just pushed the clutch in and called it good.
And you bring me to the exact points that I was bringing up. Greg Anderson, because Indy is almost like the first race of the countdown as far as wanting to win it, the pressure, the prestige of winning the U.S. Nationals.
Right.
He might have had a 655 in that car and he still loses. Why? Because he was 066 on the tree. Just what I was talking about going into the countdown. Greg Anderson, unfortunate but true, cannot be trusted on the starting line. He may have the best car, doesn't matter. You can't trust him to cut the lights when he needs to. And there's a proven fact right there against Aaron Stanfield. 066, even if he goes 655, he loses. Game over. Thanks for coming. Another point I was making, Erica Enders. When the money's on the line, 014 against Jeg Coughlin Jr. She knew who she was racing.
Oh, yeah.
You know Jegs is 020 or better for the most part and what he's going to do. And she just rises to the occasion when she needs to. Round 1 against Sienna Wildgus, she didn't need to. 050 light, David Quadra, 027, Jeg Coughlin, 014. When she needs it, she goes and gets it. Granted, she didn't have the car. It spun the tires and she lost. If that car runs within 100th of Jeg, she wins the race. She wins the race.
And the car was going to run. I mean, she had the better car. That's why I was shocked that they didn't swap lanes, to be honest with you. I was just beyond shocked. So,
and that's why it's so hard for me to bet against her going into this countdown, because when she needs it, she goes and gets it. She was 014, the car let her down. As great as Aaron Stanfield has been looking lately, and he's been looking great, I will even consider him a player coming down into the last race of the year. I just think, honestly, if I had to pick 3 cars going into this countdown, it's going to be Erica Enders, Jeg Coughlin, based off of his driving, Jeg Coughlin Jr., and Dallas Glenn. And I just think because of their driving ability, it's going to get them there.
I mean, you can't bet against it. Me personally, even the way that the season has played out and the points gaps that we've had throughout the year, I would not be surprised in the least to see 6 drivers going into Pomona with a chance at the championship. With 1.5 points on the line, I think you could see as many as 6, because you can name off all these drivers, but at the end of the day, we're going to whittle them down to 8, to 4, and then 2. And depending on how the qualifying ladder is laid out, we're going to see some big countdown matchups first round. Big time. And Mason McGahey, Troy Jr., Jerry Tucker, Christian Quadra, who, congratulations to him, raced his way into the countdown and he stayed in the top 10. Those guys are going to break some countdown drivers' hearts.
Well, I was going to say the Quadras period. All 3 of those Quadras, they pretty much go for broke. I mean, it's either red light or double O with those guys. So, between those Quadras, there are going to be some hurt feelings in pro stock.
Well, and that's why I say I think that you could see as many as 6 still have a chance, because you're going to have some guys that get their day spoiled early on that is unexpected, and that's what's going to keep it close. I think Erica has the chance to go out there and win half the countdown races, but I think she also has the same chance to get knocked out second round at the other 3. And now we're law of averages against everybody else. I mean, Jeg has had a resurging year. I mean, you can't count out Troy Jr. I mean, yeah, he hasn't he's down in the bottom half of the top 10. But of course, again, with pro stock, we're putting, I think, 13 or 14 guys into the championship picture too. Yeah. So the guys at the bottom, Chris Mason, Eric Latino, Matt Hartford, Derek Kramer, I don't see these guys stepping up and turning into championship contenders, but they can definitely put some early round defeats on some of those guys and
Well,
keep it close amongst the ones that are.
And I think there's two guys who around my attention who can actually win a race or two in this countdown. Troy Coughlin Jr., who you can never count out.
No.
And as hard as this may be to say, because when the car is on, he isn't, and when he isn't, the car is, or vice versa. The car either lets him down or he lets the car down. Matt Hartford. Matt Hartford is a guy who the car will go low ET for the session. He'll go 76 on the tree, or he'll go double O on the lights, and the car will spin the tires in low gear and he'll shut it off early. Those two cars between Troy Coughlin Jr. and Matt Hartford are going to be interesting.
I mean, you're exactly right. Matt was second low for the first round with that 53, which was low to the time until Erica went a 52.9. And with a 75 light, and Aaron Stanfield said bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, he was beating the traffic out of there. He was actually heading to the steak shaman shop or going to get a meal. I mean, it was over with for his day. I mean, so those two cars, one elite car, Troy Coughlin Jr. and the KB assisted, they get power from KB Titan, Matt Hartford. I think those two cars are going to be, I don't know whether to call them key players or just they're going to play a key role in hurting someone's day or championship hopes, dashing someone's championship hope. I mean, let's just be honest. You go into the last race of the year, round one, you got Matt Hartford or Troy Coughlin Jr. You don't want either one of those cars. Let's just be honest. I wouldn't want to face either one of them round one, and I know a championship's on the line.
No. And I will go a step further and put in another driver who isn't even in the championship picture at all because he only started his first race at Seattle. Corey Reed's going to hurt some feelings too in this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he
Corey
had a
Reed
broken motor
go out there, and if that car didn't break into burnout against Aaron Stanfield in round two, I would like to have seen how that would have played out, because that could have been Aaron Stanfield's lucky break that he needed to win the U.S. Nationals, because Corey was in the good lane and the kid could cut a light and the car was running the number. So that would have been an epic battle between the two of them. But Corey Reed is definitely going to be a contender. I think he might even get his first win before the season's out.
No, he just might. I wouldn't put it past him. We'll just have to see. I mean, that's like we said before. We don't run them on paper. We'll see. It will be interesting. But, we can't do nothing but congratulate Aaron Stanfield winning Indy. I believe he doubled up. I believe he won the sportsman ranks as well. And
he did. He won a Factory X.
You know what? Kid can drive. He's got the power. He might just go all the way. We'll just have to see. We're going here. They booted us on Instagram. I guess after the hour, they end the stream. But Pro Stock Motorcycle. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say one final note on Pro Stock and the Aaron Stanfield situation. It almost reminds me or makes me think of I don't know that Jeg did it too often. I know Bo Butner did sometimes, but these guys that run two classes in the same race, you're getting twice the shots at the Christmas tree. The argument can be made that you're wearing yourself thin, you're getting too wore out, but I feel like the difference in time between the rounds, you go out there, you make a round, you make a run, you get out of the car, you do your interview, you get back in line, you get in the other car, you make a run, you're staying amped up, you're staying in the moment. And I'm wondering if that might not be a competitive advantage for Aaron too, in running these two cars going on through there, getting twice the shots at the tree, getting twice the shots at the racetrack, even though it's in a different car. You're still, I mean, there's no substitute for trying to hit the tree in a car, dumping the clutch.
No, there isn't. I mean, and those guys, they just get I guess practice after practice after practice, and right. it just helps. I mean, you can't do nothing. It can't hurt. It definitely can't hurt. And then you look at someone like Erica. I mean, if she's going to top fuel next year, oh my goodness, look out. Look out. Look out. I mean, that's going to be crazy. All right. Pro Stock Motorcycle. Well, this is what happens when you remove the sandbags. It's exactly what happens when you remove the sandbags. They took some time off at Seattle and Sonoma, the Vance and Hines team. They weren't going to run with sandbags at Indy. They did for the first 2 or 3 sessions of qualifying, and they said, you know what, screw it. We got a full field here. We ain't hurt no feelings. We're coming to win, and that's what we're going to do. From Q4 on, they pretty much annihilated the field as they done for most of the year. They took the past 2 races off. They figured, you know what, we'll remove the sandbags. They had to wait anyway. And you just saw what happened. I mean, yeah. Poor Angie Smith didn't have a chance. Didn't have a chance. Gage Herrera's back. He never left, ladies and gentlemen. They just put sandbags on the bike, to be honest with you. Gage Herrera never left. Unfortunate but true. Welcome back, Gage. Welcome back, Vance and Hines.
All right, you say that they gave up the first couple sessions, but I mean, Q3, John Hall was low for the session by 4 thousandths over Gage and almost a mile and a half an hour. Q4, Gage was number 1 with an 80 with a 9 low for the session, but Matt Smith went an 81.6, so he was right there. You know, they weren't like they were too far away from each other. Q5, the last session down, a 685. Hector Jr. went a 686, and he was a mile an hour and a half faster. John Hall had 2 miles an hour on him. So, I mean, it's not like they were going out there crushing the competition when, you know, they kept it close. I mean, it wasn't like they went out there and just ran over everybody. And then you go into the first round, maybe a little bit more, because I'm like, okay, let's see what they could do going down the track. With the good air, the good weather, because it was really cool. The headwind is what really hurt everybody. But Gianna still went 200 miles an hour into that headwind. She went an 80 flat, 200. And I'm like, all right, here we go. Richard Gadsden goes 80 with an 8. I'm like, all right, here we go. John Hall, the bike went out of the groove, and he had to lift because that gave Mark Ingerson to win. Because Mark was not going to, I mean, that 696, he was way behind. He was not going to come out there and take that. All right, let's see what we can do. Matt Smith goes to 78.7. Gage goes to 77.2. They were both at 199. So, I mean, they're only 100th apart. Matt Smith had an 033 light. Gage Herrera had an 087. So, Gage was there for the taking. You put those 2 bikes against each other, Matt Smith would have turned on that win light. And Gage kind of came back in the next round. He went a 75 in the heat, which was a little bit more surprising.
500s on the next closest bike.
Well, yeah, I mean, it happens. So they got the tune-up right, but he had an 029 light, and he was low for the semis with an 80, 022 light, and perfect reaction time in the final. Credit where credit's due. The kid hit the tree perfect and said, bye.
So with the cooler conditions, everyone had to kind of change their tune-up a little bit, whether it was gear ratio, whatever the case may be. So they made it close in round 1. From the second round on, they had 500s on everyone in the field. Once they figured out the air and the gearing and made sure everything was right, they had 500s on everyone in the field. Thanks for coming. Welcome to Indy, and welcome back, Vance and Hines and Gage Herrera. I mean,
500s on the field and 020 or better on the tree. Thanks.
You know, I'm going to count round 1 as the conditions that completely changed. And everyone's just trying to get the feel of things. You just want to make sure better safe than sorry. Once they figured that out, especially with 2 bikes, come round 2, thanks for coming. I mean, no one should even bother up showing up in the staging lanes. I mean, it was over with at that point. You know what? It is what it is. Yeah, poor Angie Smith. I mean, with those sandbags removed, I mean, look, that's 6 bike lengths he had on her. I mean, there was no.
Oh yeah, he had a perfect light. Of course, he's gonna have 6 bike lengths on her.
No, it didn't matter if the light was perfect or not. She didn't stand a chance. I mean, she didn't stand a chance.
Swap the lights; they're a lot closer. Give Angie the perfect light and give Gage the 038 light, and math it out. They're probably maybe a bike and a half apart.
And Gage still wins.
Oh, he's gonna. Oh
yeah, he still wins. She could have been perfect on the tree, and he could have been 038. He still wins.
All right. So here's my question. What happened to Matt Smith's bike? Why, Angie had Matt left first. He was 018 to her 031. She went to 82, just like she had been all day, and he goes out there and goes to 84.
You know what? I think something was off on Matt's bike all weekend long. Even though he qualified number 2, that bike was not back halving like it normally does.
When he was down 2 miles an hour from the other passes too.
Correct. So, I mean, that bike usually stays in the 200 range, especially when I seen Gianna go 200, and to see Matt at least go. I mean, he usually has a mile an hour or two on Angie and Gianna's bike. I mean, exactly. Gianna goes 200, Matt goes 201 or 202. That just wasn't happening this weekend. And if you look throughout qualifying, Matt's bike was not back halving the way it normally does. It was not running that big mile an hour, because as great as Gage's bike is, Matt usually out mile an hour Gage's bike all the time. And that just was not happening. I don't know. Remember, they did have a rule change after Sonoma, and they didn't run in Brainerd. I believe it was extra 15 pounds put on the bike. I don't know if they just haven't placed their weight properly, or they're still trying to figure it out. But that was not the Matt Smith motorcycle that we've been seeing earlier this year. Even when he lost to Angie, I kind of felt like he was going to lose that race. To me, he just did not have the bike. I mean, in 84 or 82, he just hadn't had the bike, even though he qualified second. It just wasn't the bike to me that had been dominant. And I don't know what it is.
And in the same vein, losing to John Hall in the Mission Foods Challenge on Saturday too.
Yeah, his bike is usually 100 or so faster than the other MSR bikes, and that just wasn't the case this weekend. Why? I don't know. It was not running the big speed it normally does. I don't know.
Definitely credit where credit's due to Angie after putting that bike into Sand Trap in Q4 and then coming out there. And what I had heard in the pits was that the right-hand lane right somewhere in the shutdown area has got a real wicked bump. And if you hit it just right, it really upsets the bike and really like get you bouncing and get you going. I know that they had the fairing or whatever that like broke and came off the bike, like just parts and pieces that come flying off.
Yeah, I saw that.
Goes into the Sand Trap and cleans everything up, gets out there, gets back on it, and goes all the way to the finals and has a chance to win the U.S. Nationals. And speaking of the shutdown areas from here and into the future, Chris Bostic debuting a parachute on the Pro Stock motorcycle was pretty cool too.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. He started pulling that thing about Q3 or Q4. He started releasing it, and then it's kind of funny. He ran right before Angie Smith. And he pulls the chute and comes to a stop, and then the very next pair, Angie Smith goes down the track and goes straight into the Sand Trap, and it almost is like a telltale sign of the direction that need to go with Pro Stock motorcycle right now. It's not a bad thing. If anything, it's the extra place to put the 15 pounds. Right. I mean, yeah. After seeing that in back-to-back runs where Bostic goes down there, pulls a chute, and then the very next pair, Angie Smith goes down there and ends up in the Sand Trap, I don't see how anyone in Pro Stock motorcycle doesn't look at that and go, you know what? We might want to go that direction. I don't see how the rule isn't changed. I'm not going to say immediately, but going into next season, parachutes. Because I mean, you got to believe Andy was wishing she had a parachute once she realized that bike wasn't coming to a stop. Just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I am never against anything that helps for safety. Just like in Pro Stock back in the mid '90s when they only used to have just the one parachute, and the wind gusts would catch them and start making them go all over the place in the top end or pull the rear end out. And they started going to a dual parachute setup.
I believe Warren
parachutes, and
Yeah, I believe Warren Johnson started running 2 parachutes in '95.
Right.
And by 96, 97.
By that time, it started becoming mandatory. It was like, you know what? We need to have these to slow these cars down because they're getting too fast, and they definitely have no downforce, and they need that. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a great step forward, and I hope that it's an advancement that more teams take on and choose to run that option. But never any bad thing to say about any attempt or movement on safety, for sure.
No, not at all. All right. I'm going to ask you this, but I kind of have a feeling what your answer is going to be. Your countdown prediction in the Pro Stock motorcycle, I feel like you're going to say Gage Herrera, kind of like an Austin Prock situation. pretty much run shot on the field, right?
I feel like, yeah, I think that Gage is going to repeat as a champion. And I feel like if you're looking at a top three, I'm probably going to be leaning towards Gage, Matt, and it's really hard to say who's going to fill that third spot. I really want to say Richard Gadsden's going to step up, even though he hasn't been running as quick and as fast as Gage's bike. But, I mean, the way that Gianna's been going lately, I mean, if she could start putting together a couple races, I feel like she could be up there. John Hall can be up there. Chase Van Zandt can be up there. I mean, Gage and Matt are going to battle it out. I think it's probably going to just be who's going to end up third. And it's interesting to think of who you put in the big three when it comes down to the end of it. I'd almost lean towards let's just put it this way. I'll say a Matt Smith racing bike in third, whether it be John Hall, Angie Smith, or Gianna over the second Vance and Hines bike.
Can anyone beat Gage Herrera?
I don't think he's going to sweep the countdown. I don't think he's going to win all the races. He will be beaten in the countdown, but I don't think he's going to lose the championship.
I don't even know if he'll be beat. I mean, unless there's a mechanical issues. When they removed those sandbags off those bikes, especially his, I mean, it was pretty much done. I don't think he'll be beat. I think he might actually sweep the countdown unless, I don't see them putting the sandbags back on it. I mean, once they removed it, it was over. And
well, I mean, they might just for a simple fact of keeping it close. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they might, but there is no doubt that they sandbagged, to me, Seattle and Sonoma. And then all of a sudden, they just turned the wick up. I mean, it was like after 3 sessions, they were just like, you know what, enough's enough. And that was it. That was it. I mean, and by round 2 on Monday, it was really over. I mean, they were just like, you know what, screw it. If they don't like it, oh well. 500s on the field the rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, and so the one thing that we've been kind of talking about, championship predictions, and I know they're doing a points reset, and I think that first place, it's a 20-point gap from first to second when they reset them, right?
Yeah, something like that.
20 points. So as I look through the point standings throughout the season for the Mission Foods Challenge, because that's where these bonus points come into play, Gage Herrera and Matt Smith both had 13 points. So that's not really going to affect their gap between each other. In Pro Stock, Erica Enders and Dallas Glenn both got 14 points. So it's not going to affect their gap to each other. And they still had more than everybody else. So it'll put them a little bit further ahead. But in Funny Car, Austin Prock earned 25 points in the Mission Foods Challenge. And second was J.R. Todd with 11. John Force was third with 9. Hagen's got 9. Tasca's got 6. So really, Austin Prock was going in with a 20-point lead anyway. He almost doubled it and gave himself a second round lead, basically a 2-round lead going into the championship because of his Mission Foods Challenge points too. And in the top fuel side of things, Justin Ashley, no surprise there, had the most points at 14. Antron Brown, Sean Langdon, Doug Coletta at 12, 11, and 9. So when we do the points reset, Justin will get a little bit more of a gap on second, third, not so much fourth, because that's where Antron will be. It's only going to be a 2-point spread there. But when we start factoring in, which NHRA hasn't released the final countdown standings yet, I have not seen that posted, just the final season standings. So it'll be interesting to see how those little points affect the positions too.
Well, we will find out. We will see. And you know what? By the third race of the countdown, we'll have a whole lot of clarity on what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But you know what, Dave? Football's kicking off.
Perfect.
And,
just in time.
That's our, really. And this is our show for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments. Kind of funny. I will start reading comments more as we do these shows. We look to see you after Reading. Hopefully that Monday, if everything's all right. Dave, good talking to you. Good having you on as always. I appreciate you.
A pleasure, as always.
Hey, couldn't do it without you, man. To everyone else, thanks for watching. We'll be back after running. Thank you, guys. We're out.
Good night.